On Wednesday morning, before the sun had a chance to chase away the thin mist draped across the sky, Xavia felt that something was off. It wasn't a noise, nor an intuition, it was an unnatural silence. As if the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. She set her steaming cup of tea down on the table and walked over to the living room window, where morning light usually poured in like a warm greeting from nature. But today, the light was cut off by a large shadow. For a brief moment, she thought it might be a truck parked improperly, or a potted tree knocked over by the wind. But as her eyes adjusted to the contrast, her heart felt like it was being squeezed inside her chest. A lion, massive and majestic, was sitting on her front porch. Uncaged, unchained, unafraid, just sitting there, like a monument made of flesh and blood in the middle of a peaceful suburb. Xavia instinctively stepped back, her hands trembling as she pulled the curtain shut. This couldn't be real. This was a quiet suburban area, where the wildest thing that could happen was a stray dog wandering down the street. But the creature outside her house, with its blazing golden mane and massive form, could not possibly be an illusion. No roar, no movement, just a pair of amber eyes staring directly into the glass, as if it was waiting. She immediately thought of calling the police or an animal conservation center. But something made her hesitate. Not fear, but a deep, familiar feeling in her heart, as if that lion knew her. The next day, Xavia woke up earlier than usual, as if an invisible voice was pulling her out of an unfinished dream. She walked to the window, and it was still there. The lion, sitting beneath the ancient maple tree right in front of her yard. The morning breeze gently swept through its golden mane, creating a movement like soft waves of fire. No chains, no stakes, and no signs of leaving. It had chosen to stay. By the third day, Xavia stopped calling the rescue center. They thought she was delusional. Could be a stray dog, or a big cat, but it can't be a lion, they said. But Xavia knew exactly what she saw. Every time her eyes met the lion's gaze, she felt seen through, as if it were not assessing her like a predator, but rather, like a guardian of time. It didn't roar, it didn't wander, it just stayed there, looking into her house with an eerily calm presence. As if it knew something she didn't. She began to lose sleep. Not out of fear, but because her memory started to fragment into shards of light. Unnamed images flickering through her half-conscious sleep. Sunlight piercing through dense jungle. The distant sound of a roar. The gentle touch of a massive creature when she was very small. Could it be she had met it before? Or had it once saved her? Day 4. The sun, tinged with red, was slowly sinking beneath the horizon, bathing Xavia's front yard in a soft, warm orange glow. She sat motionless by the window, just as she had every day. But this time, something had changed. The lion stood up. Her heart skipped a beat. For 4 days straight, it had only sat there, like a sacred statue guarding forgotten memories. And now, it began to move forward. Step by slow step, heavy, deliberate, yet graceful, it walked straight toward her front door. No roar, no charge, only the silence of a creature that knew exactly what was unfolding, while the human before it had no idea what she was about to step into. Xavia sprang to her feet. Her heart pounded like a war drum. By all logic, her first instinct should have been to run, lock the door, call the police. But instead, she reached for the doorknob. Her hand was ice cold. The metal seemed to draw out the confusion swirling in her chest. The lion stopped, right at the doorstep. The distance between them was now no more than an arm's length. Its eyes looked into hers. No blinking, no avoidance. And yet, no threat either. It was waiting, not to attack, but to wait for her to realize something. In that moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. The wind ceased. Leaves stopped rustling. There were only two beings, one woman, one lion, facing each other as if some invisible covenant was about to be revealed. Xavia exhaled slowly, then gently turned the doorknob. The wooden door creaked open with a soft groan, as if even the house itself trembled at what was about to happen. The door swung wide open. Xavia stood there, not as the lonely woman in an old suburban house anymore. In the moment her eyes met the lion's gaze, something ancient awakened within her. No fear, no confusion, only a strange, deeply familiar feeling, as if she had stood here before, opened this very door, and seen it, all along. Long time ago. The lion didn't move forward. It sat down, right on the doorstep. Its amber eyes never left her, so deep that time itself seemed to slow down. The setting sun turned its mane into shimmering gold. Each strand swayed softly in the breeze, like a fire burning in slow motion. Xavia felt her throat tighten. She dropped to her knees, sitting on the front step, and whispered, "What do you want from me?" It didn't answer, but in its eyes, something responded, not in words, but in a memory, a signal, something her heart understood, though her mind had no name for it. Xavia slowly reached out her hand. She didn't know why she did it. Only that, if she didn't touch it, she would never understand why it had come back. The lion tilted its head, it didn't flinch. It leaned in, and when her fingers touched the coarse fur beneath its neck, a flood of memory crashed through her. Childhood, the forest, the hesitant footsteps of a 10-year-old girl lost during a family trip in Africa. The wind whispering through the canopy. And those eyes, the same eyes of the lion who had saved her from the path of death that day. "No, no, it can't be," Xavia whispered, her hand trembling. But her heart had known, long before her mind could deny it. It was him. The evening wind rustled through the dry treetops, carrying with it the scent of earth, the scent of time, and something that felt like the smell of a memory long buried. Xavia sat beside the lion, her hand still resting gently on its neck. No one spoke, no roar, no questions, only silence, but not an empty one. The sky began to shift into a deep shade of purple. She whispered, as if to confirm the impossible to herself, "You are the lion from back then." As a child, during that fateful family trip to the Serengeti, Xavia had gotten separated from the group after an unexpected downpour. By dusk, she was exhausted, lost in the vast forest, with the distant calls of wild animals echoing all around. And then, the lion had appeared. It didn't hunt. It didn't threaten. It walked beside her, slowly, guiding her back to safety. That memory. Her parents had always told her it was just a hallucination brought on by fear. She had come to believe that too, and eventually forgot, or thought she had. But now, with the lion before her, with that gaze, with the way it sat in silence yet understood her completely, everything returned. Xavia began to cry, not out of fear, but because she had realized something more sacred than fear. A wild soul had never left her. It had come back, not by accident, but because it knew the time had come. The wind seemed to stop blowing as Xavia slowly stepped into the backyard garden, the place where she used to play as a child. The lion walked beside her, not guiding, not forcing, just a quiet shadow accompanying her. Suddenly, it stopped in front of the old oak tree, where her grandfather used to sit and read every afternoon. Xavia's heart pounded. She remembered, on the day he passed, he had mentioned a family heirloom, something no one in the family ever understood. A guardian key, he had called it. She knelt, the ground beneath the tree was soft, blanketed in dry leaves, and then, a small wooden box revealed itself beneath the tangled roots. Trembling, Xavia lifted the lid. Inside, a bronze badge, carved with the image of a lion with deep, round eyes, identical to the gaze staring at her now. Alongside it, an old sheet of paper, her grandfather's handwriting, shaky but clear. "If you see it, it means you're ready, not to run, but to protect. It is a friend, the soul that guards our bloodline." Xavia burst into tears, not from fear, not from mere emotion, but because everything finally made sense. The lion was not just a piece of childhood memory. It was the witness, the protector, the flame bearer. Xavia stood still, the badge resting in her hand, the sunset casting a golden hue over its ancient engravings. The lion remained beside her, its gaze unblinking, as if listening to something not spoken, but felt. And then, in that profound silence, she sensed the ground beneath her feet whispering. Not in words, but in feeling, a feeling she had long forgotten. That she belonged here. The trees, the sky, the air, and this lion. They were all waiting for something from her. A promise, an action, an awakening. She recalled the many times her grandfather had taken her walking through the woods, teaching her how to listen to the voice of the wind, how to recognize when an animal was in pain, how to sense when nature itself was calling for help. And now, All those memories became a perfect piece of the puzzle. The lion, she now understood, hadn't returned only out of affection. It carried a call from the deepest heart of this land. Perhaps what her grandfather once said was true. There will come a day when the soul of Mother Earth can no longer defend itself. And when that day comes, our bloodline, with hearts wide enough and hands strong enough, must rise. Xavia gently tightened her grip on the badge. The wind rose, but it wasn't cold. It felt like encouragement. She turned to the lion and spoke, not as a command, but as a vow. I won't run anymore. The lion's eyes lit up, not with fierceness, but with calm, as if it had been waiting for that sentence for a very long time. Then, it stood, neither walking away, nor leading, just walking beside her. One woman, one lion, one mission. Xavia walked, following the vague calling inside her, each step like touching a memory. The lion walked beside her, not leading, not urging, just accompanying, like a twin soul in an ancient ritual she had never studied but somehow had always known. They passed through the backyard garden. The weeds had long overgrown the path, but now, they parted to the sides, as if making way for the air. The wind rose. Above, birds circled in wide arcs, as if drawing a sign in the sky. And then, beneath the old oak tree, where her grandfather once told her he had buried the heart of this land, the lion stopped. Xavia stopped too. There, beneath the gnarled roots, was a small wooden box, the one she had seen in dreams, weathered and faded, but radiating an energy that gave her goosebumps. She knelt down, brushing aside the dry leaves and soil clinging to the box. Her fingers trembled as they touched the rough wooden surface, as if touching time itself. The box creaked open. Inside lay a piece of leather map, a silver-white feather, and a handwritten letter, signed by her grandfather. The first line choked her breath. If you're reading this, then the bloodline is speaking, and the soul of the earth has begun to awaken. Xavia clutched the letter, tears falling silently. Each word felt like a message from another world, telling her that the family's legacy was not land or wealth, but a mission to protect the balance between humankind and nature. And the lion, Leo, was not just an old friend. He was the temple guardian, the living memory, the witness to a sacred vow being reborn. Xavia looked up. The crimson sunset bathed the ground, as if blessing the return of the guardian. The lion stepped forward and bowed his head, softly, as if passing on the mantle of protection. And she, for the first time, felt no fear. Only, that she was in the right place. And at the right time. Xavia sat dazed beneath the oak tree, the last rays of the day filtering through the leaves, casting golden threads across her hair. On her lap lay the open wooden box, and in the palm of her hand, a silver-white feather, shimmering like moonlight woven into thread. It resembled no feather she had ever seen. Not from a dove, not from an eagle, but like something born out of myth, light as mist, yet strangely heavy when held, as if it carried unspoken oaths. She brought the feather close to her heart. And suddenly, images surged forth, not memories, but dreams remembered. And now she knew, they had never been dreams. One night, long ago in childhood, Xavia had dreamed she stood in a moonlit field. Before her, a giant lion knelt, and from behind it, an old man appeared, his back slightly hunched, hair white as snow. He said nothing. He simply reached out his hand, and in it was this very feather. At the time, she had dismissed it as a strange dream. But now, that memory returned like an engraving on stone, vivid, real enough to chill her skin. The feather was an invitation, a boundary, a sign of the chosen one. The lion, Leo, had been silently beside her all this time. But when her eyes met his, she suddenly understood something. That gaze, she had seen it once before, through a fence, on a late afternoon when she was just 8. Yes. She had seen him, at her grandfather's farm, inside a wide enclosure he had called, the special area. She hadn't understood then. He had simply said, this lion is not like the others. He knows things that humans have forgotten. Now she understood. Leo was never a wild beast. He was a living link between generations of guardians and this sacred land. And the silver feather was the key that would open what comes next. She turned to the lion, her voice trembling. How long have you been waiting for me? Leo didn't roar. He only bowed his head and closed his eyes, as if replying, "We were only ever separated by time. But the soul never loses its way." And in that moment, Xavia was no longer the city girl, surrounded by concrete walls and unread emails. She was the inheritor of something older than language, stronger than blood. A dream once thought forgotten had now awakened. As Xavia stood up, the silver feather in her hand gave off a low, resonant vibration, like a calling, not from outside, but from deep within the earth. Leo began to move forward slowly, his steps gliding silently over the grass, as if the ground had long known the rhythm of his walk across generations. They circled around the back of the garden, to a piece of land hidden behind thick, thorny brambles that grew like a barrier. Xavia had never set foot there, even though this house had been in her family for 3 generations. Leo stopped before a slanted stone, blanketed in moss, like a nameless headstone. Then he lifted his head and let out a low growl, not the roar of the wild, but more like a call, an ancient chant for the souls still sleeping. Moments later, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Xavia stepped back, heart pounding. From under the dry soil, a stone circle slowly emerged. The stones were arranged in a crescent, each engraved with strange symbols: an eye, a flame, a water droplet, a leaf, and a lion's paw print. She didn't know how she knew, but somewhere deep inside, the words surfaced. The 5 seals, the marks of the guardian. These were the very symbols her grandfather used to draw in his old journal. As a child, Xavia had thought it was just a bedtime story, a playful legend he told to soothe her to sleep. But now, the symbols were coming alive, lifted by the earth, returning to the one worthy of receiving them. Leo looked at her, then bowed his head and gently touched the stone marked with the water droplet. And in that instant, Xavia understood. Each guardian in her lineage had been entrusted with a sacred element. And the water droplet symbolized rebirth, continuity, and forgiveness. "I am the heir to the element of water," Xavia whispered, tears quietly falling. In that moment, she heard the wind speaking, not clearly, but with solemn majesty. This bloodline does not merely protect the land, it safeguards memory. And memory is where the soul never dies. The silver feather in Xavia's hand began to tremble, and then softly glow. She knelt and placed it at the center of the stone circle. The light spread outward like underground streams returning to their source. Leo let out a low growl, a sound of welcome. Xavia no longer had doubts. She was not just a descendant. She was the successor. The next guardian had returned. The light from the silver feather gradually faded, leaving behind a thin mist, like smoke, drifting gently around the stone circle. But within Xavia, something had awakened. Not just memory, but a kind of ancient knowledge, known without study, understood without being told. Leo turned to look at her, then quietly walked back toward the house. But not through the front door, he moved to the left side, toward a small, rotted wooden frame that led down to an old storage cellar Xavia had never once opened during all her years living there. Her hand trembled as she touched the rusted latch. Inside, the beam of her flashlight swept across thick layers of dust on shelves, old wooden chests, and a tilted painting, depicting her grandfather seated beside a lion. It was Leo. But Leo, from decades ago. Xavia felt her breath catch. In the painting, her grandfather wasn't just resting a hand on the lion's shoulder. He was wearing the same bronze medallion now hanging around her own neck. Just beneath the painting was a small chest, sealed with an antique brass lock. She knelt, fitting the medallion into the key groove. Click. The lid sprang open. Inside was an aged leather-bound journal. The first page was handwritten, in a script she instantly recognized. To the successor. If you are reading this, then Leo has brought you here. He always knows who the chosen one is. You are not just a descendant. You are the living memory of this bloodline. Read slowly, because everything you need is within these pages. Even the truths the modern world has long forgotten. About the guardian's oath, about the bond between human and beast, and about the soul, which never dies, when it is truly loved. Xavia's hands trembled as she turned to the next page. The following entry was a memory, recording the day her grandfather had rescued Leo as a young lion. Hunted by illegal poachers. I didn't save him. He saved me. The way he looked at me, it's the same way he looks at you. Xavia was stunned. A door inside her mind had just unlocked. She remembered Leo's eyes, not the gaze of a wild animal, but the eyes of an ancient soul. A companion, a keeper. Now she understood. Leo hadn't just returned for her. He had come to pass on a legacy. Not one of power, but of memory and protection. Leo let out a soft growl behind her. He stood at the base of the cellar stairs, eyes looking up, as if waiting for Xavia to rise and step into the world above, where the real test was about to begin. The moon hung high overhead, casting silver light across the field behind the house. The same field where Xavia once ran as a child, where her grandfather once taught her how to listen to the wind and feel the breath of the earth. But tonight, it wasn't just memory. It was a rite. Leo stopped in the middle of the tall grass, where an ancient stone circle lay hidden beneath moss and thyme. No one had ever spoken of it. But now, under the moonlight, each stone seemed to glow, gently pulsing to the rhythm of Xavia's heartbeat. She stepped into the center of the circle. Leo followed, standing opposite her, his golden eyes holding an entire galaxy of forgotten ages. Xavia placed her hand on the medallion and looked directly into Leo's gaze. With a voice calm yet full of gravity, she said, "I understand now. I am the last of the guardian bloodline, and I accept the oath." There was no thunder, no roaring, only a silence so sacred. It felt as if all of nature had paused to listen. Leo bowed his head, not in submission but in respect. A primeval beast, witness to generations come and gone, now entrusting the role of sole protector to the one human he believed in. Xavia lowered her forehead to touch Leo's. A wave of warmth surged through her, as if every shattered part inside her, the doubts, the loneliness, the loss, was now being made whole. Her soul was no longer alone. And when Xavia opened her eyes, the world around her hadn't changed. But she had. She was no longer the woman who once felt lost in her own home. She was the inheritor, the chosen one, a part of something far greater than herself, greater even than time. Leo turned and slowly walked out of the stone circle. He didn't need to signal. Xavia followed. Without hesitation, they walked side by side, as if it had always been this way, woman and lion, human and memory. Weeks later, neighbors would say they often saw Xavia walking along the forest's edge in the evenings. Sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied by a large animal that looked like a wild cat. But no one ever got a picture. No one was quite sure. As for Xavia, she had nothing to prove. Because every time she looked up, she saw those eyes. Leo, guardian of the blood she now carried. And one distant night in the far future, when her time had come, and the lion was no longer at her side, she would know this, with absolute certainty. He would return, when the soul is ready, when memory calls the next name. Do you believe that some souls never truly leave us? That sometimes, in our loneliest moments, a gaze, a memory, a spirit guide, returns, not to remind us of fear, but to call us back to what we've forgotten, our purpose, our memory, and a love that cannot be lost. If you've ever felt a connection you couldn't explain, if you've ever looked into the eyes of a creature and seen something deeper than instinct, then maybe you, too, are being called. The only question is, will you dare to open the door and step through? Thank you for listening to the story of Xavia and Leo. If your heart fell silent in that moment when they met, leave a symbol of Leo below. And if you believe that a true bond will always find its way back, share this story, so that the souls still waiting to be remembered can find their way home.